Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining the Great Dynamics podcast. My name is Ahmed Hassan. And as always, we have a very interesting guest. Today with me is Mack. Mack is a veteran of the British military and a former intelligence officer. And right now, he is a recruiter in the cyber threat as well as the security sphere. I know he will be able to explain it much better himself. Mack, thank you for coming.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Interesting background. How did you end up where you are today? Like, how does that? It's a bit interesting, right? It's a bit different.
No, sure. No, it is. How did I end up where I am today? So I joined the military in 2009, and I joined an infantry battalion, and that joining was off the back of I was a welder before I joined the army, and I just thought this can't be life, and there's obviously nothing wrong with being a welder, but I needed a little bit more excitement, so I joined the military, and I spent five years in the infantry doing some really good stuff. Did a little bit in Afghanistan, and when you're in the military, you get these briefs from various different organisations like the SAS and SBS, SRR, and the one that I ended up joining was the Defence Human Unit, which is known as Samson. And the reason for that was because all significant operations are intelligence led, right? And it just really piqued my interest in how that works. So when the guys from Hereford or Poole are going into to do their strike ops, what's the story behind the scenes? How did they get to that point, and how do they find out what to do, where to go, what the building's like, all that sort of stuff. So the stuff behind before they go in the operations, and that's what DHU do. We were more focused on human intelligence. So the job title was agent handler. So running covert human intelligence sources, and then producing a human report off the back of that, and and that would go to various different customers. And I did that for about 7 years in various different locations. And I got to my 12-year point. I'd just come off a very successful operation in the Middle East, and I was there for about 8 months because of COVID. We couldn't get back, and I thought it was just time. I ended on a high. I always knew that I wanted to get into recruitment, and that was before I deployed on my last tour. And just because it's a people's industry, so when and I think it matches really well with, I was an agent handler, I was building rapport with people, managing relationships, and it's very similar in a very strange way, but you're having to build relationships with people here at Trident Search, whether that be a client base or whether that will be candidates that are looking for roles. And so that's where I thought my skill set's probably going to lie. And funnily enough, I wanted to complete scrub of my military career and anything military. So I actually went into private equity recruitment. And I did that for about a year and a half. Did I enjoy it? For the most part, yes. But I missed being in that domain, in the intelligence domain. Now, I didn't want to go back into intelligence. So I thought, where can I use my skill set and still sort of dip my toe in the water in the intelligence game? And that's when I reached out to Josh. He's our co-founder at Trident Search. And obviously he was interested in my background. And, I joined them back in May. And now I'm sort of the head of UK sort of threat intelligence for Trident Search, and placing people within either cyber threat intelligence or, your conventional sense. So, your open source intelligence roles. It could be people that are, that are on the dark web, or it could be people that are tracking cyber criminals or state backed, like your black cats or whoever. So that's where I've ended up today. And part of my role is to connect veterans, and I naturally have that network through being at DHU and in the military. So That's where I'm at now.
Yeah, well, interesting journey, man. I mean, you went actually from a recruiter to a recruiter,
Yes.
so it's not that crazy of a step.
No, you're right.
I'm surprised that there's not more guys and girls doing that.
Yeah. So I did. I mean, I've had to do a little bit of digging because I put a post out on LinkedIn not too long ago saying, I don't think there's another recruiter that's actually lived and breathed the intelligence game who understands it like I do. And I'm hoping there's not, because that'd have been a bit embarrassing for me. But no, I don't think there is actually. I don't. And actually, it has gained a little bit of traction, and it holds the credibility really that I'm not just pretending that I understand. I actually do understand. I understand what makes a good intelligence professional, and you know, so yeah, it works extremely well.
Yeah, no, I think it's incredibly important that you do this work, really, because I spoke to a friend a couple of months ago, and he was, let's say, between jobs, and he's a bit of a madman. So he was like, I want to do something where I get a little bit of exercise. So he decided to become a postman for Royal Mail, and he told me, I said that there is a colleague of mine, and he told me the background of the colleague, former military intelligence, and like incredibly impressive background. And I was like, hey, why on earth is that person working at the Royal Mail? That there's plenty of opportunities, but this person felt that, well, where? I have kids, I have bills to pay, and how do I even do that, right? And I think having somebody like yourself is if that person had somebody like you to talk to, I think there would be a very different situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's having exposure in the military and the exposure on the outside. Before I joined Trident and I was doing my research on the private sector, I wasn't aware that it was so big. There are some fantastic firms out there doing some really great work within the private sector. And I just don't think that's highlighted enough within the military that gives people, an insight into what's actually out there. Especially people that are intelligence core through and through. There is an abundance of work, and their skill set is sought after in the private market. And even guys that weren't traditionally in core, this is in the conventional sense, and the CTI space, that guys that have been at sort of like 299, the signals regiment and all of that sort of stuff. But in the conventional sense, people that have been at DHU for long periods of time, but maybe started life like I did, maybe in the infantry or something like that, that there's still work out there for them. But again, it's just having the exposure to what's in the private market, and that's what I'm really trying to do at the moment. I've just started a threat intelligence club, a closed group on LinkedIn. I'll add you
Yeah,
once
please.
when we finish this. So yeah, and it's just highlighting to people that actually there's a lot of work out here for ex-mil in cyber and the conventional sense, and the skill sets are really sought after. It is slightly different in cyber threat intelligence than it is in conventional, where someone who's in core who knows open source intelligence like the back of their hand, that there's a direct correlation to moving into the private sector, and that skill set is matched, so they can sort of make a very smooth transition. Whereas if someone's not really done cyber threat intelligence, but they've done open source, they'd probably still need to go and do their qualifications and understand the cyber domain a little bit more.
Are there like opportunities to like upskill for particularly veterans that maybe people don't know about?
I always the go-to in sort of cyber is go and look at your CREST qualifications. So CREST are sort of the leading accreditation within cyber. So and there's some beginner courses on there that always stands well with when it's on your CV and you're putting it out to clients, that they'll take a look. And there's yeah, I'm doing a bit of plugging here.
Yeah,
So
no, no, that's
so There's Stu Bertram at ArcX. They do some really good courses. They are doing some amazing work. I think they're relatively new, but their courses, I've done a couple of their courses, and I find them very, very useful.
Because that's something that I think one of the main questions that I get messages. I mean, we've talked about this outside of the podcast, but a lot of questions come in from people, not just military, but also like conventional intelligence professionals that they say, okay, where from here? And we did a podcast. Actually, I did a podcast a couple of days ago, so that will come out soon. But where the person talked about we talked about the lack of advertisement, what the role is, right? Calling it everything but intelligence or everything but,
Yeah, yeah, no,
you
yeah, I
know,
totally agree. I totally
because
agree.
it has such, and this person works like in the humanitarian sector, but it's even more sensitive. But I think from a corporate sector, it would help if the communication was a bit like how roles are advertised are more
Yeah,
in
yeah.
line where people can
Yeah, no,
understand.
absolutely. Call a spade a spade. If it's intelligent, if it's intelligence people you need, and then call it that. But no, no, I get it. But there's various different forms now, isn't there? Of not forms of intelligence, but you can get your corporate investigations, due diligence, pre-transactional stuff where people are using their OSINT skill set to maybe investigate a certain individual or a certain company. I know people do it for private equity firms and hedge funds where they'll use their open source intelligence skills to do a little bit of digging on maybe a limited partner that's maybe looking to invest into a private equity fund, or or if the PE fund are looking to do an acquisition. Okay, well let's have a look at some of the people that are working at the firm that they want to acquire. And then you've got your threat intelligence. So what me and you would be more sort of used to in your physical sort of security if we're going to invest in. I think I spoke to someone the other day actually, and the rebuild of Ukraine and people not fail to understand, but maybe don't fully understand that are not in the intelligence game, that Western Ukraine's okay. It's the east of Ukraine that's been getting smashed. So, you know, people that want to invest in Ukraine will still want to do their investigative work to see if that investment's viable and is it going to be viable. But yeah, so that's some of the stuff that we do as well.
That's super interesting because again, this is I'm so happy that you said that because it ties in with the last podcast that I recorded where we talked about the opportunities intelligence can create for companies that always look for intelligence maybe as reactive or from a threat perspective and not from, hey, is there opportunity because we don't know about it. So I think Ukraine is a perfect example that was talked about. For example, energy infrastructure needs investment, and I think for big companies, I think there's huge opportunities there where risk can be mitigated. Do you see a growth in that domain?
Yeah, so intelligence functions in large firms always have to prove their worth. Okay, and I suppose I mean, because of the background, I think it's paramount that you have an intelligence function within your firm, whether that is threat intelligence where you're providing information or intelligence on what's happening on the ground in a certain area, or if you're doing an intelligence summary on a certain area. But people are more reactive still than they are proactive. And what we certainly see is, if nothing happens, so it's maybe in the cyber domain, if a firm hasn't come under attack, or everything's going fine, they're like, well, why do we need these intelligence guys? Actually, because they're informing you of people that are targeting your firm or what part of your firm. So then you're putting things in place to stop that happening. So that's why it's not happened. It's almost like they need something to happen to justify the team being there, and that's what I think some people, some firms that look at it that way, like, well, nothing's happened to us, so why have we got the intelligence function? Well, that's why nothing's happens, because you've got the intelligence function.
Yeah, it's the left of boom, right of boom conundrum, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so I've seen that, and it's very difficult. I made a foray into cyber threat. Actually, I set up a company which I closed down again not so long ago because I felt I could do it with great dynamics, and it was just not. It was just too much work for what it was. But we were like focusing mainly on ultra high net worth individuals and VIPs and then monitoring like 24/7 their digital footprint. And yeah, we got some really good clients out of that. And but I was doing it all pretty much by myself, and that was difficult. So and I understood like intelligence around irregular warfare and this type of stuff much better. So I was like, you know what? I would just combine the two, and then I stopped chasing cyber clients. But to circle back a little bit, can you talk a little bit about your time in the infantry and how your transition into intelligence came about? Was that a
Yeah.
natural one or?
No, it really wasn't a natural one. And I think, some of the listeners will agree that have been in the military and have been around infantry soldiers, going from an infantry mindset into a intelligence mindset was very, very different. So, yeah, my time in the infantry, it was really fun. Enjoyed it, every minute of it. We did a few bits in Afghanistan. Nothing really to sort of write home about there. And then I went on selection for DHU in 2015 and was successful. And I think out of the 25 that were on our course, I think 6 of us were successful. So it's quite a high attrition rate with DHU. But the struggle, the transition had to happen pretty quickly, and you have to grow up very quickly. Well, in the infantry, it's sort of Peter Pan syndrome. You can be 35 years old, but you're still gonna be, around guys that are a bit younger, and that's just the way that it is. As you climb the ranks in the infantry, you do tend to grow up. But I was a corporal at the time. I was 20, I think I was 29. And did I get pulled up for not behaviour, some of probably my language during the course, and maybe sort of my attitude a little bit towards the course, and that was a shock. And I really had to just sort of knuckle down and think, okay, it's sort of big boys rules here, and it's so yeah. The transition wasn't hard, it wasn't easy, but there was a transition that I had to make. I remember being pulled into the office of the OC and them saying that, because you're watched every single minute of the day when you're in that building on camera, and there are people watching, they're monitoring your behavior and what you're like. There was times where I was pulled and be like, if you're going to be in this game, you need to really, I don't want to say grow up, because that's probably a little bit too harsh, but certainly, get your act together a little bit, because once this course is passed and, you're going to go out the door, there's a lot of autonomy at DHU where you're trusted to, do things by yourself, to the highest standard. So yeah, there was certainly a transition there. So yeah, I passed that, and I think, like any other unit, you go through cycles. So we sort of went on to pre-deployment training, which was it had various different aspects to it, and then found out where I was heading. And I went on it was about 7-month tour, my first human tour as a human operator, and by far the most stressful thing I've ever done. That was it was at the height of, I was focused on Dash, and at that time in 2017, although they were falling in certain areas, in other areas they were still pretty well. No, they were very, very, very rampant. So the reporting was thick and fast. So I was running a few covert human intelligence sources, and you could be in a meeting or on the phone to them for sometimes up to 6-7 hours, debriefing debriefing the information from them, and then that has to be all then compiled into intelligence reports. So we were looking at some 18, 19-hour days for 6 months at a time, pushing out reports. If we had to go out and sort of meet a chiz, then that sort of shuts the whole team out, because we have to then go out and conduct tradecraft to go and meet the source, and then you're playing catch up. So it was probably the most stressful time I've had in my life, but I'll caveat that with the most exciting. With some of the work we were doing, some of the individuals that I was talking to, and some of the individuals that we were reporting on was mind blowing. I'd gone from an infantry section commander running around the Brecon Beacons to sat in an intelligence, unit reporting on some pretty big hitters within Dash. So it was all exciting stuff.
And if you look back on it now, if there are any guys or girls that are interested in making the step that you made, what advice would you give them?
I mean, I don't know what it's like now. I don't know, but do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely do it.
Yeah.
I did a year and a half in DHU's recruiting team. Well, it was a recruitment team sort of. We'd go around either delivering the unit's capability to the wider defence, because we're very small, very small unit. So we'd either go around and deliver the unit's capability to wider defence, or we'd go around and do sort of a recruitment drive. So I'd go to different locations around the UK, whether that be RAF, Navy, Army, and deliver that recruitment brief and try and get people to come on board. It has been single-handedly the best thing that I've ever done in my life so far. Obviously, bar Trident now, but it does set you up for success outside of the military. Would I have got my role at the private equity recruitment firm without being in DHU? Absolutely not. They were very interested in my background. They were interested that I'd done recruitment in a different sense, that I was able to understand and debrief people. So it does set you up. So if anyone is listening, go and do it. It's some of the stuff that DHU do, you'll never know until you're doing it. Some of the people that they work alongside, you'll never know until you're actually in the unit and doing it for yourself. The stuff is just not common knowledge.
Yeah, for sure. This is a question that I get often. I answer it in different ways, but I think it's particularly difficult in the type of roles that yourself have done. When a company comes to you for a job or you apply somewhere, how do you go about references and proving that you were in this organization, because it's often classified?
Yeah, I mean, being in the organization isn't classified. So that what we did, and even some of that isn't classified. I can say that yes, I was an agent handler at the Defence Human Unit. I think when you start sort of going into locations, and I'm not going to sit here and talk how we did tradecraft or anything like that. So being in the organisation now isn't classified. So just my line managers. So my references would be my line manager, because yes, people are interested, but no hiring managers. Are they interested in where I've been and what I've done? Probably not. They just want to see what transferable skills have I got to their business that can help them make money. And it sounds harsh, but a lot of people, if they're not on like a veteran program or they don't understand, a lot of people don't care that you've been in the military. They want to know, okay, you've been in the military, that's great, but what skills have you got that can benefit my business? And that's just the way it is, unfortunately. For not for everybody, and I will caveat that not for everybody, because there are some, really good firms out there that support the veteran program. Some big organisations that do, but then there's others that don't. And I think it's rightly so. What skill set can you bring to this business that's going to help this business grow? It's business at the end of the day.
True, very true. You make the step from DHU and then you go into the private equity.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
what was that like?
Tough, really, really tough. Because I left DHU on I can't remember the exact date, but it was a Friday, and I started with this firm on the Monday. So I had 2 days. So leaving the military in itself is a massive thing, and probably I underestimated just how big. It was really tough trying to understand finance, the private markets, understanding private equity, understanding people's backgrounds because they're very different to mine. I mean, I grew up on a council estate in Leicester. A lot of these people have either gone to Oxford or Cambridge, and have had very different starts to life than I did. But I suppose that helps with my past. You can just sort of not relate, but you can at least pretend that you can relate to these people. But I couldn't in the end. I had a great team, and they taught me how to recruit in this sense. So I can't take that away from them. That the standards that they were extremely high, but I just wasn't happy. They weren't my type of people to mix with and engage with. I wouldn't go out on the socials with them, and I think that's fair. You're allowed to. I think you're allowed to say, okay, these are not my type of people. Moving forward to now, Trident Search, where they are 100% my type of people, and the culture that Josh and Charlie have built at Trident is second to none. I don't think anyone could build a better culture, if I'm completely honest.
Culture is very important, isn't it?
Huge. It is paramount. Yeah. I think especially with it's important for everyone, but I think especially a veteran who's been accustomed to a certain culture for a long time. And a lot of people in the military don't. I mean, from my perspective, they don't want to leave the military because they hate the life. Well, not hate the life, but it's because they want stability. They don't want to go away anymore. They want to settle down. They want to, you know, it's not because of the people around them, a lot of the time, because it's fun. It's great. It's a great place to be. So having this culture here at Trident Search is been a breath of fresh air. I'm in civilian employment. I'm in a great job with a great culture, and with great flexibility. I couldn't have asked for anything better, really. So culture is certainly important for the veteran community as well. If you can move into civilian employment and sort of maintain some sort of culture that you're accustomed to over how many years you serve, then I think you're onto a winner.
When do you decide? Obviously, there's definitely going to be a culture change from the military into the private sector.
Yeah.
When do you decide that I need to change, or what's the barrier to I need to change towards I will never fit in. I need to find something else.
Sure.
When is that point?
Yeah. So when you become extremely unhappy, because I went
Fair enough.
from DHU to private equity recruitment, and I knew that I couldn't be that person that I was in the military. Absolutely not, because it's the culture's just, it, and that's from probably the way you talk, the way some of the jokes that you'd be happy to share in the military, but you are categorically not going to share that in the office at work. So you do have to. I had to change a lot, or actually, it was sort of putting a mask on for the day whilst I was at work, and that's what made me extremely unhappy, that I just couldn't be. I'm not saying you have to be yourself at work. You certainly have to be a polished version of yourself, but it's nice to be able to be yourself. I just couldn't do that in the private equity firm that I was at. It was like wearing a mask during the day, and then at home just having that sort of release. I was paid extremely well there, but just it wasn't worth it. We all ended on great terms. They recognised that I was unhappy. I sort of said yes, I am, and we parted ways on great terms.
Okay, but that's good then. That you were able to make that change, and bridges were burned. There's something that I don't think we've talked about on a podcast before, but I think since I'm talking to you, I think you can give us a good perspective on this. In the news, we've seen a lot of people that were either in the military or in civilian intelligence agencies that then go, to the Middle East or to the Far East, right, to do contracting work, maybe similar work that they were doing when they were in their government roles. And we've seen a lot of backlash in the media. First of all, what's your opinion on that move? And secondly, what advice would you give for people that are contemplating? Because obviously there's also a money aspect in this.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the honest answer there is I wouldn't like to give any advice on that. I don't really know. People's motivations are different, aren't they? It could be the financial. The military aren't. They're not paid very well, and I think the security services aren't paid very well either, especially for some of the work that they do. So people's motivations are different, whether they want to do it for financial gain, because I know the private sector doing contract work, you can earn a lot of money. So yeah, it's something that I wouldn't really like to have an opinion on. Really, it's people's motivations are different as to why they'd want to do that. Yeah, I wouldn't know.
Okay. No, I mean, I think it's very difficult to navigate, and I agree with you. To each their own. But
Yeah, absolutely.
obviously, there are like I cannot imagine if you're leaving government, then you would go maybe work for a government that's, let's say, adversarial, to your own. I think that's very risky to do that. And but yeah, that's my opinion. I'm not gonna push that on you. So, in your current role, where you're speaking to a lot of people that are leaving either government roles or non-government roles, how do you feel you should prepare yourself to make that transition outside of maybe courses, but as you said, culture changes and these type of
Yeah,
things?
yeah.
Uh,
I I don't think you can prepare. So this is where we come in actually, and we match people not only on skill set, but we match up on culture. I could speak to someone who looks fantastic on paper, but then I think he wouldn't fit in that firm. He wouldn't fit with a culture. So that's part of our job is, when a client's asking us to find people, they're not just asking us to find these people on paper that they've got this qualification, that qualification. It goes a little bit deeper than that. It can be, this is our culture. We need someone to really be able to fit in. And a lot of first round interviews are on fit. They don't go straight into a technical round. It's, tell me a little bit about you, tell me a little bit about yourself, what you've done. So your first rounds are usually a fit interview. So yeah, we play a big part in matching people with the right culture. Now, I think when you're moving from an intelligence firm, from government or military, if you're sort of staying in the same line of work, most people there have come from your background anyway. Not all, but most. So the culture is already there, or maybe a little bit more corporate and maybe a little bit more PC. But that's just the way that it has to be. So yeah, 9 times out of 10, the culture is going to be relatively the same. And the security services have exposure to military, and military have exposure to the security services. So people know what type of people come from the security services and from the military. So there's certainly no shock there if someone from security services went into a firm that was predominantly military, because they've probably had exposure to the military anyway, and they understand the culture, and vice versa.
I wanted to take a step back, and something that we talk about this podcast a lot. We've already spoken a lot about the transitioning. What advice would you give for somebody who is just leaving school or maybe is a welder? You know,
Is a good question. What advice would I give? It's genuinely tough. So I joined the infantry. I didn't really know much about the military at all, but I joined the infantry because I wanted to do. I wanted to be a soldier, and that's what I wanted to be. I didn't want to go in as an engineer or anything like that. But to be honest, I didn't really know that they existed in the military before I joined. And it was my recruitment sergeant, before it was taken over by, is it Capita now, who were doing the recruitment? I don't know, but they was like, yes, infantry. I was like, yeah, that would work for me. So what advice would I give? Do your research, really. on what it is that you want to do and where it can benefit you when you eventually leave. The military is stripping away a lot of benefits. One being when they changed the pensions. Would I have stayed in the military if my pension was the same as the old pension? Probably, but it hadn't. I don't feel that there's no real benefits to stay in long term anymore, because you don't get your pension until pension age. So you can spend 22 years in the military and then still have to find, another job at 40, 42 years old, 45 years old. I mean, you'll find work, but I just think that's an even harder transition to make, right? So advice is do your research on what it is that you want to be. If I had my time again, and some of the listeners, because I know a few friends will listen to this podcast, I'd have probably joined the Int Corps and gone through your traditional intelligence route. Wouldn't have changed DHU for the world. I'd have still gone for DHU, but I'll caveat with I'm happy with how my career went and what I did. But yeah, I think intelligence corps or a signals regiment, 299, someone like that are quite sought after the military. Well, I suppose it's like the guys from Hereford or Poole. They're always going to be sought after. They're never going to struggle for work because they've been operating in the two most prestigious units in the world. So I'd always look forward to what happens when I get out and where do I want to be. I know people don't think that far, but always have that plan ahead, because there's not really much going on certainly in the army. There's not an awful lot going on anymore. When Afghanistan was closed down and Iraq finished and then Afghanistan finished, what else is there? What else is there to do? Training other nations, which is great. It's fantastic, but other than going into Hereford or Poole, you're not really going to get much operational output.
Yeah, fair enough. I think a lot of young people, I know that, listen to this podcast and they wonder, how do I get into intelligence, right? And there's so many paths, and I think the best listened episodes are the ones where we put all the advices on how to get into intelligence together, right? And it's interesting because one of the areas I recommend to some of our interns and young analysts that are kind of like orientating themselves, either the ones that are going into government or the ones that maybe are in government and looking for something. I always talk about cyber because it's such a sought after area and the salaries are generally a lot better than if you were just a bog standard intelligence analyst. And I don't think the barrier of entry is as high as people think. I think it's what is your opinion on that?
Yeah, no, there's various different routes, really, isn't there? You join the military and go down that route, or you can directly apply for the security services. I think you may need a degree to join. I know certainly SIS you need a degree to join them, and maybe Thames House as well. Or you go into, if you've come from a research background, and that you've got your open source intelligence skill set, you've done the courses, you know what you're doing, and you go from university into a company as a grad, and then you build up from there. So there's various different routes. I think the most sought after, because of the work that people do, are either ex-security services or ex-military intelligence, just because of the exposure that you've had. And again, I know I keep caveating, I think the military can be quite far behind in some of the stuff some of the products that they use, some of the tools that they use. And, I think the private markets are certainly a step ahead of some of the tools that they're using. But I think the most sought after people would be someone who's gone through security services or military.
I haven't asked this question often because I think it would be a very difficult question to answer. But since you're a recruiter, I think I can get a good answer from you. Could you, and I know you have to caveat this, but could you paint a picture what like salary would look like if somebody went into from a junior, media, a more senior role? Could you give like ranges?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we talk conventional intelligence first and foremost, and again, there's different streams to this, because if you're a grad and you either come from a research background, and you're going into an open source intelligence role at, say, a threat intelligence provider, for your first year, you're probably looking at about 35,000, and that's London. Anywhere out of London, you're looking at about 30k for your first year, and that would probably move up after a year and a bit to maybe between the 35 and 40. And then if you're and again, this is dependent on the size of the firm, and for different firms pay different. A senior open source intelligence analyst can look to get paid between 50 and 60k. But then again, I've seen intelligence managers that manage the whole, manage a team of analysts that are also on 60k. So again, it just depends on the firm. But in cyber pays more. Your first 1 to 3 years, probably looking at between 40, 45, maybe 40 and 50 for your first year. But that moves up pretty quickly, for a 3 years plus, maybe up to 60. And then you start getting into sort of intelligence manager between 70 and 90, and that quickly creeps up as you go in. So cyber pays more than conventional intelligence, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, it's where's the demand lies, right?
Well, exactly that.
Right. Because I've had young analysts that leave us that went into jobs that paid close to 70, but that's a complete outlier because they went in the financial services industry, right? So it obviously depends on but I think, yeah, this is kind of what I was expecting, actually, what you said. So it's not a surprise.
Yeah, like if you're going into a financial institution, that you're going to get paid a lot more. But then I have these conversations all the time, and one of my questions to all my candidates is, where do you best suit? Where do you suit? Would you work for a large organization, or do you want to work for a small medium enterprise where maybe you're going to have a little bit more impact on the business? But you're not going to be paid as much. So you have to really outweigh it. I mean, I know that I'd prefer a small medium enterprise where I'm going to have an impact on the business, rather than going into a large organization just because they pay a bit more. But that's just me.
As an owner of a small, medium-sized business, I agree to that. But it's I'm kind of biased. But no, I've tried. Obviously, I've tried. I've worked for big organizations, and as you said, culture. The first conversation I had about understanding PC culture, like, I didn't understand, like, outside of that circle that I was in, it was a bit bizarre, especially working with humanitarian sector and that research. I was having conversations about gender and these type of things, and I didn't understand really. I thought how we interview somebody on the ground that's a woman is obviously different how we would interview, or we would align with doing something in a country in Africa. We would rather have a woman interviewing a woman, these type of things. And I was told, gender is much more than just men and women. And I didn't know what that meant. And it's not because, I'm some sort of barbarian. It's just I didn't know what that meant. So this person had to explain to me, hey, there's much more that comes with this role. And I didn't think for the work that I was doing it was important, but they thought. So at the end of the day, the client decides, what's important and what's not. And I had to. Well, I didn't. I didn't take the contract because it didn't really fit with what we do. But I got a bit of a reality check, like how different institutions look at these things, and I felt like, oh, I would have to maybe walk on eggshells, which I think you alluded to in the work that you were doing. I wanted to ask you. I mean, I think you gave so much good advice. Do you have any questions for me?
No, no. I mean, I've followed your work since, I can't remember when I first reached out.
Earlier this year, I think.
It was early this year, and I think the work that you're certainly doing, I see it all the time, is fantastic. And I think, I don't know, Marcus Marcus will certainly listen to this podcast. The reach that you have into, certainly, and hopefully it gets a little bit bigger, especially with the DHU guys. I think they're going to be mega interested in the work that you do. But where do you see Grey Dynamics in 2-3 years?
What a question. But I was prepared for this question. No, I
Yeah.
wasn't. But I have I think you have to have an idea if you're running an organization where you want to go. So I think in 2 to 3 years, when it comes to intelligence education, particularly between like people going to university or going to the security services or military, there's always this gap of how do I match and what do I understand. And I think when it comes to like delivering intelligence education, particularly online and making it more accessible, in 2 to 3 years, I want us to be the biggest player doing that. That's something that I've been dreaming about for years of doing. People have been asking me for years, like, how do I get into this and how do I demystify these roles? I think you're a perfect example of people that are doing that are making it visible and more accessible. And I think that's something we want to do. And I think I want to create, and I think we are on our way, but I want to create a large community for intelligence professionals, an international one, nothing with like sensitive or where we share sources and methods or these type of things, but where if you're looking for to work with somebody in, let's say, Nigeria or Japan, that you can find like-minded individuals.
Yeah, we do a similar thing at Trident. We have the Waterloo Cyber Club, and it's a networking event. There's no sales. It's just like-minded people getting together and have and just sharing thoughts. And if anything comes off the back of it, it's fine. And you'll get an invite as well, Ahmed, if you can make it over to the UK in spring. I'll be putting on a threat intelligence
I'll definitely come.
networking night, and again there'll be some guest speakers, and yeah, food and drinks on Trident, I hope. So yeah, no, but yeah, it's all about creating the community, and that's what I'm trying to do with the Threat Intelligence Club on LinkedIn. It's not about sales or it's genuinely, let's just share some knowledge in the industry, and let's create a community where we can just all talk together about experiences. If new people are coming in, what was your path to getting into cyber threat intelligence or threat intelligence? Just a secure community with like-minded people, just being able to talk what they want to talk about, whether that would be their experiences in work, whether they're their career path or what they're trying to achieve. And it's going pretty well at the moment.
Yeah, no, I think yeah, again, you're doing a brilliant job of that. And what I see, obviously, when I look at people that sign up or that email me, there's such a huge amount of people that has grown up on Western movies and culture, and they want to do intelligence, but in their country there is no community, right? So we are lucky that the UK and obviously the US is massive, but make the jump over to continental Europe, there's no real community in there either, So where like I'm Dutch, but where everything is so like closed off, and it's secrecy for the sake of secrecy and not to protect anything, right? So to make more of an effort to get people access to these, like talented people access to work and opportunities, I think that's something that I'm hoping to do. I think a friend of mine who's been on the podcast, Schiphorst, he does Chinese OSINT. He does a lot on LinkedIn. Great guy. And finally, we got to meet this year in Stockholm. And he does, out of his own pocket, actually, I didn't know he did this, but he does trainings that he basically takes a gamble on, and he goes to, Far East and Southeast Asia, and so like expanding. And we have a lot of friends, colleagues, and listeners to the podcast that are Aussies or Kiwis that are like, hey, what about us? Because there's no real, there's nothing really like how do we do it? So
Yeah.
we're doing our best with them too, and so I think that's something like, especially online, that's an area that really I want to grow. And I think offline we're doing a pretty good job. We always want to grow, but where we are now offline first, and like online is a bit of like a secondary. I want to switch that. That's where I see ourselves in 2 to 3 years. Lastly, I wanted to ask you, what are you listening to? What are you reading? Any cultural recommendations you can give? Doesn't have to
What
be
do
Intel
I?
related.
No, it's not. Mine at the minute, I was reading more salesy type books actually at the moment,
Great.
just to, brush up on them sort of skills. And it made a change from, because I went heavily into private equity in the private markets. And geez, I read a lot on private equity. So now just sort of brushing up on sort of sales techniques and all of that sort of stuff. So all salesy books, podcasts. I touched yours with, was it the SB guy that you had on this week?
Pasha Monroe.
Pasha. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
good. Really enjoyed that. And then yeah, that's it really. I always try and stay on top of the cyber stuff, because it's ever changing. So again, ArcX, they ran a 3 cyber threat intelligence 101 course, which I was doing there. So yeah, I read little bits of stuff all the time, but my main reading at the moment is sales and
Can
how
you
to get
give
more.
like some titles of books?
I think so. It's called Getting More, and I can't remember the author now, and I'm not in my house to get the book. Yeah, it was Getting More, and then there was Jordan Belfort's book as well, which I know it's a little bit cliche, but actually it's really good.
Hey,
It's
it
really good.
works.
It works exactly that.
Is it Getting More, how you can negotiate to succeed in work?
Oh,
Is
I
that
think
the
that,
one?
yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. If I can give, because I read some of that stuff too. I think if you run a business, you kind of have to. But the two ones that have been the most impactful that I read recently is Never Split the Difference. It's about negotiating, written by a former FBI hostage negotiator. It's really, for anybody listening, it's an awesome book, and I read it now twice. I was able to implement the techniques in negotiations already, and it had immediate impact for me. So yeah, that's a big one. And the other one, I think, for anybody that's working in cyber, in intelligence, anywhere where you're writing and you're writing online, is another book called, I think it's called The Art and Business of Writing Online by Nicholas Cole. Yeah, another amazing one. So those are the ones that I read recently.
Yeah, I like a good. People learn in different ways, and I'm a massive believer in this. And well, it's proven, isn't it, that you get people that I can't sit there and look at a PowerPoint and take in all that information. I have to do, or I have to be doing it to be able to learn, or watch something. And one thing that really got me up to speed with the Middle East, and it was called Losing Iraq on PBS. I watched that over and over again, and maybe it could be a little bit biased, but it gave such a good insight into actually why did Iraq go the way that it did, and then I hope you haven't got any American friends listening, but with Bremer taking over the going into Iraq and sort of failing there, but yeah, it's Losing Iraq on PBS is probably one of the best sort of all informed what happened to Iraq in a short space of time.
It's only 75% of the listeners that are American, so probably it's fine. uh, so, no, but I mean, I think that's a widely held belief or opinion about Bremer. So I don't think you should pull punches there. But any final thoughts from you?
No, I think if any of your listeners do want to do want to chat, please reach out. You know, it's not all. It genuinely isn't. We're trying to change the face of how recruitment is really, because I know there's a lot of recruiters that have a bad press. Okay, and it's about money, and it's about money, and it's about, you know, that sort of recruiter lifestyle, and that's just not what we're about here at Trident. We genuinely want to help people, you know. So if it's just a call for a bit of advice, reach out. You know, if you're not even thinking about leaving the military yet, reach out. Let's have a chat. You know, my priority really is helping people, and just giving them the exposure that they're potentially not getting elsewhere, and giving them a bit of an understanding of there's a lot of work out there for certainly intelligence professionals or threat intelligence professionals. So even if it's a call to be like, I'm working at this place, I'm being paid this, am I being underpaid? And I'll give you an honest answer. So
We
yeah.
like that. No, and I can attest that you do, really, because I know some of the people you've placed, and yeah, truly, I think how we have spoken and our conversations, for the people listening, Mac really is the real deal. So yeah, please reach. We will put your information in the chat, and I'll be sending some people your way. We already talked about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, thank you so much for coming on. This was really awesome. Really, I think you gave so many gold nuggets. I kept writing notes and timestamps on when you said what you said. So really appreciate that. And for the people listening, if you guys made it this far, please, give us some feedback on what you think of the podcast. I don't really ask that much, but I was told by the producer to ask you guys what you think and give us feedback so we can improve. And yeah, see you guys next week. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
Thank you.